right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Hi, everyone. I'm Collette Spagnolo, Global VP of Marketing Analytics here at DoubleVerify, and I'm based in our global headquarters in New York. But it is great to be here today. I would like to start by welcoming everyone to our 2023 Global Insights Report webinar. Our mission at DV is to make digital advertising stronger, safer, and more secure. And transparency and thought leadership are both critical to this mission, which is why we are all here today. DV's annual Global Insights Report provides advertisers with an in-depth market-by-market analysis spanning APAC, EMEA, LATAM, and North America to help inform digital advertising strategies. This is our 7th annual Global Insights Report, and our findings have become more robust every year. This year, our very talented analytics team looked at media quality and performance trends from 5.5 trillion media transactions, over 1,000 customers in nearly 100 countries. But today's focus is, of course, on APAC, which spans multiple subregions, including Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, and India. So I'll be taking us through the findings from the report with specific findings and insights from APAC, and then a fireside chat with our panelists, Steve Mougis and Dominic Barnard, will follow, and then we'll separate into breakout rooms to discuss findings that are specific to each of our subregions. There's one for Australia, New Zealand, one for India, and one for Southeast Asia. Before I start the presentation, though, let me first have our APAC panelists, Steve and Dom, introduce themselves. Steve, we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Mougis. I'm the Global Chief Revenue Officer for DoubleVerify. I've been with DV for almost 11 years. I'm also based in the New York headquarters, functionally responsible for the growth of the business and oversee sales and account management globally. Throw it over to you, Dom.
Sure. Yeah. So thanks firstly for inviting me for the panel today. I'm very excited to talk about ad verification and the journey that GroupM and the industry is taking to tackle fraud and generally improve media quality. But just to introduce myself, so I'm Dom. I'm the GroupM at Nexus head of Programmatic for APAC, based out of Bangkok. Joined the team last year in January, and so basically helping the teams in the region deliver programmatic best practice and sort of maintain buying quality as well.
Great. Thank you, Steve and Dom. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing your thoughts about the trends that we're seeing and how this impacts customers and brands across the whole region. A little housekeeping for the audience. We welcome you to ask questions in the Zoom Q&A box throughout the session, and we will try to address your questions during the session if time permits, but otherwise selected questions will be addressed post-event. I also want to note the full report is available for download on our website, www.doubleverify.com. So with all of that said, let's get into it. So this year's Global Insights Report explores 3 key themes. The first being always on, which is the state of media quality for protected and unprotected advertisers, and why it is so important to ensure that verification is always on. Second, verify everywhere, the importance of verifying all media across all channels. And third, impact everywhere, how quality creates the right foundation for performance and attention. If you think about it, in many ways, verification is like a security system. And security systems offer protection in 3 ways. They act as a deterrent, they sound an alarm in the event of an emergency, and they monitor and record activity. And a holistic verification system operates quite similarly. Pre-bid activation avoids quality violations before they even happen. Post-bid blocking and filtering halts ad delivery in unacceptable environments. And the monitoring process documents and reports activity, which of course is then used to inform planning and optimization. This might sound very obvious, but you need your security system to be on for it to work, right? Well, the same goes for verification. For advertisers to achieve the full protection of a verification system, the system has to be always on, and it must be turned on everywhere. It's so important to keep your verification on and running so that it can provide a foundation of quality. So before we jump into our findings, I'm curious what the audience thinks here. Do you think that the state of quality improved, declined, or remained the same over the past year? Give everyone a second to respond. Great. So as you can see, the majority of the audience does think that the quality did improve over the last year. This is very interesting in comparison to our Americas webinar, where about half of people thought that quality actually declined. So very different from region to region here. But let's find out what actually happened. On a global level, the results are very positive. So our global benchmark for brand suitability violation rate has remained at 7.1% for the second year in a row. We saw post-bid fraud and sophisticated invalid traffic, or SIVT, decrease for the third consecutive year, but the total number of new fraud schemes actually doubled from 2020 to 2022. This means that while pre-bid fraud protections certainly mitigate the damage that fraudsters can do, those protections don't stop them from concocting new schemes that are aimed at siphoning ad spend. From 2019 to 2022, viewable rates have consistently increased. The display viewable rate is at 69%, and the video viewable rate is even higher at 74%, which is comfortably above the IAB's recommended threshold of 70%. So altogether, brand suitability, fraud, and viewability seem to be stabilizing or improving. And these positive changes are primarily driven by enhanced pre-bid protections, including authentic brand suitability. So this is what's happening globally, but what about APAC trends? The answer is nuanced. So APAC still outperforms other regions in video viewability, performing at 78% across the region, despite a minor decrease by 6% in 2022. For brand suitability, APAC had one of the lowest violation rates globally at 6.8% after a 2% decrease year over year. But that doesn't tell the whole story. If we look within the APAC region, unsurprisingly, we see that the quality of media varies from country to country. India's brand suitability violation rate is down by 33%. Compare that to the 2% for the whole region. But then Australia's brand suitability violations increased by 49% for mobile web, bringing down the overall numbers for ANZ and offsetting India's decrease. What this tells us is that there are many local nuances that impact quality, and that is why keeping verification in place in all these places is so critical. So the data that we've discussed so far has been what we saw post-bid for protected or managed DV advertisers. But to get under the hood and see what the data would show for unprotected advertisers, DV ran a test campaign that had no protections in place whatsoever. We'll refer to this as the unmanaged campaign. And the results of this campaign provided transparency into media quality when verification is not in use, or in other words, the cost of doing nothing. So what happened on that campaign? We saw 367% more fraud than on managed campaigns. And on peak days, the fraud rate for the unmanaged campaign spiked to nearly 25%, meaning that on those days, 1 out of every 4 impressions was wasted on fraud. The unmanaged campaign's viewability was also significantly worse than the managed campaigns. Video viewability in particular was 42% lower, demonstrating the necessity of measuring and optimizing to viewability. And lastly, the unmanaged campaign had a 94% higher brand suitability violation rate versus managed campaigns. And this represents a real risk to unmanaged advertisers. So a question that must be on everyone's mind is, how much do violations actually cost? What is the cost of doing nothing? Well, we ran an assessment on the unmanaged campaign to estimate how much it stood to lose for every billion impressions served. And the potential loss is substantial. This slide shows the estimated US dollars lost per billion impressions on the unmanaged campaign relative to fraud, viewability, and brand suitability. And it just goes to show when you do not have protection in place throughout the entire media transaction, impressions and ad dollars go to waste. So it is also important for your verification strategy to adapt as your media strategy evolves too. And going back to our example of the security system, if you put an addition on your house and you didn't add a camera in that space, you have just opened up a hole in your protection. And this philosophy applies to your verification system too. An always-on strategy must extend to all places where people consume media and therefore ads. So where are those places? Social, CTV, audio, all of these platforms, they present new ways to engage with audiences for advertisers, but these channels are not immune to quality concerns, not least because they often perform so differently from other media types. For example, in social, TikTok boasts strong audibility with 97% of impressions serving with sound on. In audio, one fraud scheme we tracked this year called Beat Sting actually targeted audio platforms and was siphoning over $1 million a month USD from advertisers. And when buying from retail media networks, some advertisers might be surprised to learn that their ads don't always show up on the retailer sites. In fact, audience extension placements are very prevalent in this space, and that has really great reach benefits for advertisers, but they also come with a mixed bag of concerning and good quality. 129% higher violation rate for fraud and brand suitability, but also a 91% higher viewable rate when compared to buying on retailer sites directly. Insights like these help advertisers understand how to best leverage these channels, and they provide an apples to apples comparison with their other media placements. Now, those are just 3 examples. You can imagine how this extends to all the nuanced, new emerging platforms for advertisers. And one of those platforms is connected TV. An increase in streaming subscriptions is fueling CTV's ascent globally. And as CTV becomes a top channel for both consumers and advertisers alike, measurement and protection are also becoming increasingly important because I think we all know with growth comes growing pains. So first, let's talk about that growth. CTV verification and measurement was up 62% globally year over year. But in APAC, the growth was even more striking. In India, for example, CTV impressions were up 369% versus just 1 year ago. But again, that comes with growing pains. Our unmanaged campaign had over 17.6 times more fraud than managed campaigns. And this makes sense because the DV Fraud Lab caught 3 times as many CTV schemes in 2022 versus just 2 years ago. Now, throughout this presentation, our data has been making the case for quality verification across all platforms. And coming back to our security system example, with the security system in place, you have a safe environment where you are comfortable investing and making improvements to your home. And in the case of media buying, we're talking about investing more in capturing attention and driving performance. Attention enables advertisers to optimize campaign performance and to increase their return on ad spend. And when buying media, you should consider both exposure and engagement to fully maximize your ad's impact. DV Authentic Attention is a privacy-friendly solution that provides impression-level insights at scale. Authentic Attention analyzes more than 50 data points, both on how an ad is presented and on how a user interacts with the ad or device. And together, this measures campaign effectiveness, which refines media planning and helps advertisers improve performance. Our report this year takes a deep dive into attention, but let's look at just 2 of the key factors that do drive performance. Choosing the right ad placement requires specific insights about how those placements drive performance, And you would think that most advertisers would prioritize the domains that drive the highest attention. That is, however, not the case, as this graph shows. A high volume of domains are actually lower performing. That's the pink and the yellow bars. But there is still a huge opportunity to capture attention by focusing on domains that do drive higher exposure and engagement, which would be the bars in green at the top. What else matters for attention? Just like in real estate, location is key. APAC is actually leading all regions when it comes to attention in video. Media investments in APAC are heavily focused on in-app inventory, which historically has excellent video performance. So ads served on mobile apps see higher than average overall attention. Placements in APAC, therefore, rank higher for exposure across both display and video compared with all other regions. And this helps explain the performance and why where you buy matters. So those are our main trends that we cover in our recently released Global Insights report. And now I'm going to bring Steve and Dominic back to discuss these trends and what they mean for APAC advertisers at a regional level before we bring it into the breakout rooms. So let's start by getting an understanding of the ad verification landscape across APAC by diving into the macro trends that we have found within the region. Dom, I'm going to start with you. Overall, we saw that post-bid quality continues to improve. And essentially what this means is that protected advertisers are really benefiting from implementing verification strategies. Can you speak a little bit to how GroupM has made quality and verification a priority?
Sure. So I think considering GroupM is the largest media holding group globally, we do have an increased responsibility to uphold the highest media quality standards and to set an example for the industry. Therefore, we have a range of initiatives which focus on supply management, including advanced internal reporting systems, bespoke curated inventory packages, and best practice guidance around DSP and ad verification partner settings. And we also never take our eye off the ball when it comes to evolving our media quality practices in line with industry trends as well.
Let's talk about some of those best practices. So we sometimes get questions from clients, especially across the APAC regions, about whether they can or they should turn verification off at certain times. Dom, how do you advise your clients when they ask this question?
Sure. So I'd say I wouldn't recommend to pick and choose where to apply ad verification. I think the online ecosystem is constantly shifting and changing with vast amounts of sites and content published every day. And so we need to keep tabs on where we're delivering media and to make sure that it's brand safe and fraud free. As you alluded to earlier from your report, for unmanaged campaigns, there can be up to a peak of 25% fraud rates in unmanaged campaigns. And that can be, so that's 1 in 4 ads falling victim to fraud potentially. So that I think that shows the importance of having an always on approach. But, if we turn off ad verification, it sort of opens up the chance for us to miss spikes in invalid traffic or fraud rates, therefore impacting the quality of the targeting and therefore the effectiveness of the media investment as well. So I think, as I said, I think it's essential to be monitoring as much activity as possible on an always on basis.
Great. Steve, to you, ensuring coverage across all channels and formats across all times is critical, as our research shows. Can you speak to how advertisers can make this something that is consistent across all their media buys globally? How can they be always on, even when they have multiple LOBs, brands, different regions, multiple markets, even within each region?
Sure, yeah. So, well, first and foremost, global governance is absolutely a main concern of our clients. We're working with some of the largest brands in the world, as is Dom, and with many of them, they've spent 100+ years building up their brand reputation, their brand equity, and most importantly, the trust with their consumers. So it's critical that they manage their risk and they protect the equity and trust they've built up over all these years. So just to quickly go back to your fun analogy about the security system, if you don't have the alarm system active on the one day that you get robbed, there's no point in having it at all, right? And from the research, right, what we know is that on a day-to-day basis, we can see up to a 27% swing in brand suitability. So you have to stay vigilant. You have to have it always on because you actually don't really know when you can run into some risk.
Right, and that's across fraud, brand suitability, even viewability. We saw huge swings, right, on our unmanaged campaign. But let's talk about brand safety and suitability. So this question is actually for both of you, but I'm going to start with you, Dom. So DV likes to say that we cannot treat brand safety and suitability as a one-size-fits-all approach. What are some criteria advertisers should be considering when they craft their strategy for brand suitability? And I'm specifically thinking, because this is always part of our conversation, about how they can maximize protection without compromising scale.
Sure. So I'd say there's a few things that you should consider when finding the balance between brand safety and scale. So a few sort of tactics I'd mention is firstly applying brand safety settings that are appropriate to the advertiser's risk tolerance. So don't just default to the most stringent settings if not necessary. You want to try and open up that scale as much as you possibly can, whilst also protecting the brand. And then I think another tactic to mention is starting to engage with contextual-based brand safety and suitability tactics, so which don't limit the scale and also adapt to the ever-evolving online content that we have different articles that are published every day, and we need to make sure that I think contextual strategies can adapt to that more easily. I think when it comes to if you're using inclusion lists as well, so to bring them up to a more reasonable number, so something like 5,000 domains per market. And I think even if this seems like a small number, the mass majority of spend actually goes towards the larger publishers anyway. So say like a Reuters or a New York Times or something, those kind of global publishers. Considering that they take up the most of the traffic anyway, so reducing those domains to a reasonable number doesn't limit the scale, that actually reduces the delivery to long tail sites, which can tend to be of lower quality. So I think some other tactics, just thinking about don't try to target too narrowly. Don't try and just find that individual one person that's going to buy your product. I think
unicorn.
Yeah, exactly. Try and think fairly broadly and try and use some of the tools we have. So DSP reach tools, you can estimate audience sizes prior to the campaign launch to make sure that you actually will have enough scale to actually reach a reasonable amount of audience to see if the campaign's even worth it. If you won't have that scale, then it's not really worth activating the campaign in the first place. And then lastly, I think just to see what works for each advertiser. I think it's going to the strategy is going to adjust and change as you go through the process. So it's about seeing for each campaign, did you have enough scale? Then if not, then explore how you can open up more to more inventory, and and if you're targeting very broadly, then try and narrow it down to the most quality inventory possible. So just adapt as you go along.
Great.
Yeah,
and Steve, we had a Q&A come in that's like perfect for you to also answer in addition to this question. The question is about implementing brand safety controls across all publishers at a network level, which doesn't always consider the specific content of individual websites, and I would add actually pages, which can seem like overkill. So the participant wants to know what we think about this.
Okay,
I think you're getting a 2-for-1 with this one.
All right, yeah, no worries. All right, so but I think the way I was thinking about the original question will handle most of this, but I'll make sure we come back to it. And not so different from the way Dom sort of thought about this, but generally speaking, when we think about protection at scale, they definitely go hand in hand. I think the tools have come a long way, where I think verification used to be about blunt instruments. Now we've got the ability to have the scalpel versus the sledgehammer, which I think speaks to the question in the audience, which is being able to really look at very specific pages within a website and be able to classify them and provide protection against those without shutting it off for the entire site, which is definitely something that we work with our brands on. So nowadays it's not hard for a brand to really get both maximum protection and without sacrificing scale, because they have the advanced tools to do that. In terms of safety and suitability, it's important to understand that there is a distinction between the two, right? So brand safety is about protecting advertisers against universally unsafe content. So if it's a brand safety violation, it's because it was something that almost all advertisers would consider unsafe. Suitability is where we have more flexibility and where it really comes down to the individual advertiser, because it's about navigating the subjective nature of like specific types of content. So we know what's unsafe for one advertiser can be completely fine for another. And so suitability is about managing that. And lastly, and I think this like comes up quite a bit nowadays, there's always going to be different types of content that are only inappropriate for a particular brand. So I think about like a CEO getting in trouble or a lawsuit or something to this nature, where marketers might need to create a custom category to protect themselves from that specific content. So like holistically, kind of the way I think about it is you start with brand safety, which is like your base layer. Then you build out a suitability profile that's unique to your brand. And then if needed, you will go on top of that and create a custom category. And if you're doing all these things, you're doing pretty good.
Great. Thank you both. Let's move on to CTV and fraud. So Dom, I'm going to go to you first. You know, the region, APAC, is so diverse, right? And with CTV kind of growing up differently across all the different markets, both within and outside of APAC, what would you recommend advertisers consider as they establish or are starting to really grow their CTV buys?
Absolutely. So at GroupM, I think we're very much aware of the risks around brand safety and media quality within the CTV environment. So there's historically been a trend of bad actors exploiting new buying mediums, especially ones with generally higher CPMs and also a fragmented ecosystem, which makes it easier for them to for bad actors to exploit the cracks in the system. But I think, in fact, you know, in order to tackle this fragmented nature of CTV, GroupM has actually launched Finecast. So we have our own dedicated model towards addressable, which aims to simplify addressable TV buying for our clients. As part of this, you know, a lot of effort goes into curating CTV supply. So we're working with premium partners with trusted inventory, which is measurable and allows for simplified audience targeting across multiple screens. So this is, you know, I think this shows our level of focus that we have on simplifying the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And we've launched this in many markets across APAC as well. It's a global launch, but we've been launching it in more and more markets across APAC. And on top of this, I think we also engage with ad verification partners to monitor the CTV space very closely, and then call out any vendors who we're seeing, you know, displaying any high fraud rates, or any markets that we're seeing that have elevated numbers above others.
Great, thank you. Steve, as CTV consumption continues to grow in APAC, we do hear concerns from advertisers about fraudsters exploiting premium and sometimes unprotected environments. Can you speak to the approach that DV has had in relation to providing coverage and protection on connected TV?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, thinking back to your presentation, like one of the stats that you called out was that the DV Fraud Lab caught 3 times as much fraud in CTV for 22 versus 21. So we know fraudsters have an interest in capitalizing on the high CPMs and the lack of standardization and the lack of adoption in CTV. So I think, like, the good news is that we've been on the forefront of protecting advertisers from fraud for a really long time. CTV is no different. Like, we have over a decade of experience in uncovering and preventing fraud. And I think that gives us a pretty big advantage here. From a methodology standpoint, like, what we're doing is basically we leverage the combination of AI-powered machine learning and a dedicated fraud lab to help recognize patterns that are indicative of fraud. And once we have the fraud identified, you know, our team is deploying this across all facets of the buying ecosystem. So between buyers, sellers, platforms, and you know, the goal here is just to make sure that we're extracting fraudulent traffic from the entire marketplace, and that's something that we're pretty effective at doing. It's more a matter of people adopting the tools and recognizing that they're available and deploying them.
So speaking about those tools and where we're deploying them, Dom, let's shift a little bit to video viewability in particular. What has your experience been with measuring viewability and optimizing towards video viewability, excuse me? Is this something that is table stakes across all of APAC, or do the markets need increased education on how video viewability actually can be measured?
So I think, just looking at some of the numbers earlier, I think it's great to see Southeast Asia continuing to lead the way when it comes to viewability performance. So I definitely want to call that out. But then I think that's partly due to, you know, some of our best practices in the region. But then I think also it's mainly being because the region is more mobile led anyway.
Mhm.
So it's sort of mobile first region. So that organically elevates the numbers, I think. I mean, GroupM has really tried to up its game in terms of viewability standards. So we've been going beyond the IAB standards for many years now. Starting with display, I think back in 2012, I think it was, and then with video standards, again adapted, I think, if further adapted in 2017. So this isn't a new conversation for us at all. And in fact, there's so in terms of video viewability standards, it comes down to things like native and outstream video ads, which have to be, we say that they have to be 100% in view, and to play at least 50% to at least 50% completion. And then for in-feed video ads, it must be 100% in view, as well, with or without sound, and auto-played or user-initiated. So I think there's, we've definitely tried to increase those standards beyond what the standard recommendation is. And we're also applying this to CTV environments as well. So this isn't just, this is across multiple video and display environments. I think there is actually room to further evolve our practices, though, across the entire industry when it comes to viewability. So optimizing towards a VCPM, I think, is actually more effective than a 70% benchmark. This is something we don't really talk about that often, and we stick with this sort of 70% mark. But if you approach it from a VCPM perspective, you actually broaden out the amount of inventory that can be targeted across to reach a cost-effective and highly viewable inventory. So despite that being the case, I think we're still maintaining this sort of 70% benchmark as the standard threshold as a secondary KPI. So it's better than nothing. It's definitely good that we have that in place, and we've seen those numbers increase. We're now globally above the IAB 70% benchmark as well, which is great to see. So that's almost becoming the absolute standard, and we're seeing constant improvement over time. But I think we could actually improve further by shifting towards a VCPM mindset. So that's just one thing that I think we could explore. On top of that, I think if we bring in things like attention as well, we can start to evolve viewability beyond where we've got to. We've set the standard and then move on to the sort of the elevated version of what quality is.
Perfect segue, because we're going to talk about attention now. So I think we can all admit that attention is a bit of a buzzword in the industry, but we are definitely seeing that it's being taken more seriously by brands, especially those who are looking to measure performance in a more privacy-friendly way, right? The privacy-first brands. How does GroupM view attention and its role in evaluating the efficacy of campaigns, Dom?
Sure. So I think GroupM has been an advocate of optimizing towards attention for many years as well. We've continued to push the agenda with our clients, although there's still a long way to go in terms of getting more adoption around attention and using it as a success metric. I also think the lack of adoption is partially due to the definition around what attention actually means in the industry. So we may consider attention, some may consider attention as a measurement relating to a small sample of user eye tracking data to show formats, where formats are engaged with the most during a campaign. I think this personally has a little less scalability in terms of, it's interesting data to look at, and it can tell us something about our formats, but it's generally only going to be applied to a few sample campaigns as opposed to applied to all campaigns that are being activated. So I think it has less scalability. Whereas the methodology that DV's taken in combining a set of engagement metrics to form a unified attention metric, I think this ability has much more capability to scale. And then also, I think in this form, this is what we can see as the evolution, as I kind of touched upon earlier, evolution from viewability to attention, as attention can incorporate viewability as one of its many metrics that are being consolidated into this one unified metric. So yeah, I think there's definitely a journey to go, but I think it definitely can be the next step in sort of our quality evolution.
Steve, anything to add? I know that there isn't really industry consensus, as Don was just referring to, on measuring the impact of attention. Where do you see this heading?
Yeah, well, First of all, that was an awesome answer, and I appreciate the call out there, Dom. Yeah, well, like there isn't a standard yet, and I get that, but one thing I do know is that attention matters, and it helps marketers drive outcomes, right? And so, when we look at attention on our side, we're looking at a range of signals across exposure and engagement. And we know when it's optimized, it can impact the campaign objectives. And so, like, what we're seeing is from an exposure perspective, which is really about the presentation of the ad, it can help drive branding KPIs. Whereas engagement, which is more about how a consumer is actually interacting with the ad itself, we're seeing that drive some of the direct response metrics. So we know both will work. When it comes to standardization, it's like, I think we'll get there, but it's encouraging that DV's got accreditation from the MRC. So I think that validates our approach a little bit, but I do think that we will find some standardization along the way.
Great. So now I'm going to ask you guys to gaze into your crystal balls. As we look into the future, can you tell us which innovations and trends are most exciting? What do you see emerging in the field of attention, quality measurement, or just advertising overall? Dom, I'll start with you.
Sure. So I think, firstly, as we just kind of touched upon, I think setting more industry standards around attention, I think that's really going to help us grow into that space and help clients understand it more and be able to set that as an actual success metric. So that's going to be an exciting evolution to see in the industry. And also, I think that once that's more standardized, then we can start to look at incorporating an attention success metric into more of our optimization engines. So for example, GroupM's Copilot technology, we could start to add that in as a KPI within that and start to really drive further optimization towards attention holistically. I think as well that some of the developments I'm seeing, especially on GroupM side, is curating of supply. So using a lot more supply path optimization tactics. And that's using things like holistic reporting methodologies. So trying to look across all clients' activity and see where the best sort of supply path optimization opportunities are, and how we can reduce supply down to a more quality trusted partners that we're engaging with. So that's something that continues to develop. And then I think looking on a much broader scale in terms of some of the developments we're seeing, not just in our industry, but across many industries, is the exponential advancement in AI as well. So I think that's just going to create all sorts of opportunities and also challenges, I think, going forward. So we need to stay curious about the developments of AI tech and see how that's going to impact us. I think we can use it for good and we can use it for evil. So I think we need to make sure that we're keeping tabs on it and then trying to use it to create our own opportunities as well.
We're definitely staying curious about it, that's for sure. Steve, anything to add?
I just want to look into Dom's crystal ball because I think he's nailed it. So I think from a super high level, I would say definitely AI. I see advancement in CTV brand safety coming, and then I think attention's here to stay. So I would say those are the three things that I'm looking forward to in 2023 and 2024.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dom and Steve, for a great overview about APAC at a regional level. Everyone, please continue to stay tuned, as after this, we're going to be doing a deep dive into analyses for each of the key markets within APAC. We'll now be opening the breakout rooms, so please wait for a couple of minutes. You will be automatically assigned to join the rooms relevant to your market. Thank you all and enjoy.
So what we're seeing in Australia is about almost 10% of inventory that's coming through the marketplace is showing some sort of suitability infractions or misalignment with specific brand settings, and that's actually quite a considerable jump on what we're seeing as the global average of about 6.8%. In fact, in Australia, it's grown about 20% year over year. So I want to dig in a little bit more with both Sujen and Greg to understand a bit more about how they and their brands and their partners view this space and what steps they're trying to take to ensure that they're mitigating the risk as the marketplace continues to digitize and continues to fragment the supply. So firstly, I think, Greg, we might just start with you and let's get like a broad view. So I think the first question we will have is, how do brands you work with across the portfolio, how do they think about quality as part of media planning and that process? And when you consider the quality figures in ANZ that we've been discussing, do you think that look, what's the progress that you think Australia as a whole is making? And would you or the brands have any concern at all, in particular around suitability?
Yeah. So in terms of quality, I think there's kind of threefold. Like definitely what is well integrated by brands, it's really the need for viewable impression or an opportunity to see by a human. And that I think is really has been the focus for years now, and is really what is primarily asked or expected from us. And it's really I would say this is really the 90% of the question. And I think, back to what you said about the progress in ANZ, we're very good at, kudos to the publishers, that's been very good at changing the inventory. There's a lot of work that's been going through that to actually increase viewability overall. And as a result, we'll see like in the report, we're one of the highest viewability, delivering highest viewability in APAC. So that's one aspect. I think brand suitability, however, it's less top of mind. I think, there's an increased focus on it, but often it's seen as, okay, I'm going to just blankly exclude certain environments, don't necessarily have a framework in place to actually adapt the brand suitability. It's not to say that people don't care. It's my job to educate them around how to actually overcome those challenges in brand suitability. For instance, I'm giving an example. I'm not even sure most client knows what the GAM standards are, and what risk, the appetite for risk they have in each of the categories. So our role at Spark, as well as a client advisor, it's just to actually help building that framework and then navigate it. So that's why we create a baseline that's pretty stringent in terms of brand suitability, and then based on each advertiser, we kind of adapt and to their brand needs. So, and I think one of your questions was about the brand suitability increase, and listen, I'm not overly concerned by it for now. I think the trend is when you see it happening multiple times, I would say. But last year was election year, so you can have a lot of content that can be, deemed as unsuitable. I'd be curious also to see to which extent the technology also have improved in classifying the content to kind of deliver those numbers. So I see that going down next year, but that's my prediction.
No, that's really great, actually. Thank you for that. And I tend to agree. I think that as we're seeing more inventory or more of the media inventory supply becoming digitized and measurement is on, it calls to the fact that probably more pre-bid avoidance or buying decisions and data needs to be applied, because while we're able to measure suitability infractions, the opportunities to potentially avoid moving forward. And as the market evolves, it's probably a catch-22. But Greg, probably more aligned to like how your clients are thinking. In your role focused on like biddable campaigns and activity and programmatic. Do you think buying programmatically can increase potential quality risks, or do you get asked that by brands? Because there has been sometimes a perception on what programmatic really means for the industry and what brands, how they see it. And how do you answer that?
Well, undoubtedly, programmatic can have a bit of a bad reputation in terms of quality. But I think what I say to clients in a way to provoke their thinking is more about, if anything, if you want to influence your buying at scale and you put the right parameters in place in supply, demand, and verification level, you can actually influence your practice quicker using programmatic, because it has an impact on your whole buying as opposed to when you buy direct publisher by publisher.
Can you expand a bit on that, just for anyone that's on the call right now who just might not be deeply involved in the programmatic biddable space? Can you explain what that really means?
Yeah, for sure. But a good example of that is like leveraging pre-bid solution. I think we talked about it earlier, but the pre-bid solution, how it's critical when you buy programmatic to have that as an important part. So to give people the pre-bid technology will curate the bid and inventory coming your way based on the criteria you put in the system. So that really helps you already to affect what you buy. And then if you couple that with post-bid and ability, which is often what I really like the DV product, it's how the post-bid then feed into the pre-bid to even improve your pre-bid parameters over time. So I think that continuous improvement by the system itself based on your parameters, that only programmatic can deliver that.
Yeah, amazing. I think it's a really exciting time as well in the marketplace to have like effectively a closed data loop, especially when we're seeing, I think about almost 89% of the inventory outside of search in Australia is biddable or programmatically invested in. So I think that's brilliant. I'm gonna just change tact a little bit or move over to the brand and to Sujen. Sujen, obviously, with a brand lens on it, on such a huge brand like Mondelēz, like what are your primary concerns? You got one big brand, multiple products below it and product lines below it. What are your primary concerns about quality in general, and specifically about the suitability rates that we've seen in Australia? Obviously based on the different types of target audiences that the Mondelēz products will be targeting.
Yeah, thanks, Imran. I think from a Mondelēz perspective, brand safety has been a big focus for us as a brand, right? A big quality metrics for us. In the last few years, viewability kind of kicked in, but more recently, brand suitability, right? But based on the increase rates, I'm kind of aligned with Greg's point of view, right? There are many factors last year kind of contributed to that increase. So I'm not really concerned about this. But at the same time, at Mondelēz, we're kind of new to the brand suitability journey. Greg mentioned a lot of clients still learning about it and still sort of getting across what brand suitability is, what GARM standards are as well. So we're kind of new to that. So we, historically, what we've done is we're very much focused on brand safety. So from a news perspective, right? So we have strict guidelines for placements across content. So pretty much black and white. So I think that was the key differentiator for us, is how do we look at brand suitability as the flex to our safety?
Yeah, okay. That's brilliant. And actually, like just on that as well, I think Collette, in her overview, she spoke about one key point or factor that we need to consider is like being always on. Like I love the example of the house, all right, and you're going to have your alarm on in your house to protect as well. You're not going to just turn the alarm on but leave your back door open, right? So with regards to being always on across multiple campaigns that Mondelēz will be running, and what's the approach to ensuring quality in your media buys, and how do you actually measure the value of investing in verification as a brand?
That's a good question, actually. Look, I think verification, always on verification, I see that as a basic hygiene or basic requirement for any brand wanting to play in this space, right? You can't come into digital and not have any verification. It's basically you're going to be robbed, especially with the fragmented approach in this landscape right now. So at Mondelēz, we ensure all our campaigns have always on verification. So we are protected, from a brand perspective, but also making sure our consumers are also protected as well. Without verification, we might be running our campaigns in an environment that is not impactful or safe. So it will cause detrimental impact to our brand, and more importantly, wasting our brand dollars. I think your DV report kind of showed the stat was 1 out of 4 ads being wasted on fraud or impressions, on fraud. That's basically 25% of media dollars going to waste, right? So the value here is the dollars that we've saved from fraudulent inventory through real-time buying. And what Greg mentioned is that continuous learning around data, it's always on. With turn-on verification means, always on verification means that whatever we invest are kind of shifted to high-quality working media to deliver greater impact for us for our campaigns.
Yeah, okay. And so and that allows Mondelēz to kind of understand like the recalibrate the investment to quality media in effect. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, correct. And just on that point as well. So the topic on brand suitability, and that really unlocks the opportunity for us as well, because with the advancement of semantic science, brand suitability now gives us the opportunity to play in areas that we previously never played around brand safety, because brand safety is black and white for us, but now we can play in the news content that we never used to. So gives us the opportunity to personalize our brand's approach in those areas, because that really helps us to improve our scale overall and the reach as well. And most importantly, the cost goes down because we're not applying too many filters on our campaign. So we're kind of opening up the opportunity to get more inventory that we previously never had.
That's brilliant. That's really great insight. Thank you, mate. And Greg, like when I'm thinking about just the broad portfolio of advertisers that the Spark business partners with, do you have many brands still coming to you wanting to understand what that value looks like in terms of measurement, verification, etc., and what that means for them? How do you have those conversations?
Yeah, surprisingly, yeah. Not many, like, to be honest, it's like few, but few would still need a convince to have actually always on third-party verification. I say third-party because I think predominantly is the idea that you don't know where you don't know, right? If you don't measure, you don't necessarily feel the urge to do it, because you don't know how much you got robbed, so to speak. And also there's native solution by platform sometimes that give you the false confidence that while you're measuring it, because it gives you an IAB viewability rate or any fraud rate there. So I think it's changing, like the environment become more and more fragmented. Third-party verification also is evolving. You can measure way more than you use in the past, so it's kind of less limiting in terms of perceive of covering the whole ecosystem. You have that helps a lot the conversation. Another aspect as well, the more at the market point of view, it's headline saying that advertising fraud is worth certain $1 billion, or I think I was reading an article recently where the e-marketers saying that 52% of marketers cite fears of online fraud as number one concern when it comes to digital ads. So I think it's changing, but yeah, particularly the always on to a certain point, it's still something that some people put it, verify, and say, okay, cool, we're cool, and just and I think that part is still need a bit of work.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thanks for that. I'm gonna change tack just based on the research that Collette was presenting and move into CTV. And consumption and measurement of CTV in Australia we've seen is up 150%. And across the overview we presented at the start through Collette, we saw that actually in Australia there's about 11.2% of fraud against unprotected advertisers is occurring and has occurred in the last 12 months. And we've also noticed, I've been able to report on the data points around the TV off issue, and that it hasn't been too widely spoken about in the marketplace, but this is where we can see ads that are being recorded as being shown, but the TV is actually off or the app is not on. The app's you've been exited the app, right? So it actually, the data I think that Collette mentioned was 1 in 3 CTV impressions are being served into environments that fire ads when the TV is actually turned off. Like that's a huge investment risk, right? And so to Greg or to Sujen, are you surprised by these numbers? I mean, we have a fairly tight-knit supply chain in Australia. And do you think that this is top of mind for brands when they're investing in CTV in the Australian marketplace, based on just how tight-knit that ecosystem is?
Well, I'm not very surprised by the number, to be honest. If I was running organized crime specialized in that, I think I would predominantly look at targeting that device or video in general, I would say. But video on TV, it's yield a better fraud system. So, but again, I think brands just don't necessarily undermine the issue because it's extremely hard to see, right? And also you're in a bit of a conundrum where it's like, okay, well, audience is moving away from linear, they're using CTV. Okay, well, let's buy on CTV. Okay, well, wait, there's some fraud there. It's like, okay, let's not go there. Well, no, you can't just decide to not go there. So that's why, again, maybe hammering the idea of the always on measurement that is so key, because having always on measurement across all your channel, you don't decide, you don't have decision to make around that. You just buy where the consumer is, and to ensure that there's an ad in front of them, in front of humans. So I feel like, again, that's more of a case of highlighting the importance of always on measurement and measurement everywhere. But I'm not surprised by the numbers, because it's a nascent device.
Yeah, and I think obviously that you're right. Fraud follows the money in a way, right? And these I call them cartels almost. You know, they're highly sophisticated. They've got no prejudice about what device or platform you're on. If they can hack in and figure out an algorithm that can fake some sort of quality inventory that you'll bid on that will make them money, they're going to use their AI to push that as fast as possible. And guys, I'm conscious on time, so and I know we haven't really even delved into CTV in Australia yet, but we definitely can share, or everybody who's joined us can log on to the Double Verify website to get the full GIR report. But I'm going to probably wrap it up just with one quick question, actually around attention, because we're short on time. Sujen, I'll probably just put this one to you. And what role does attention play in the media planning process for Mondelēz now, right? You said that you're probably a bit away of being moving from safety to suitability. Where are you with regards a proxy like viewability into actual attention metrics and indicators of performance for the Mondelēz business?
I think the crux for us is attention right now. It's not standardized, right? As an industry, we haven't standardized attention at all. But at Mondelēz, we use MMM, or efficiency and effectiveness in combination, as the key measure of our campaigns. So I think at this stage, to understand how attention can be a key performance indicator is to gather more data, really collectively. As a global business, we need to have a bit more data on that. Firstly, we need to standardize what attention is. I know DV has that measurement there, which is great, right? So how do we leverage that in our campaign reporting? And then gather more data globally. And then I guess the key opportunity for us is, how do we take that metric to use as a proxy for MMM effectiveness? So I guess the key steps here is find a correlation between the DV's attention metrics and our internal effectiveness measure. So I think once we fix that out or figure out how do we solve that, that's the opportunity for us. I think then we can look at attention as a metric for us. But at this stage, early days for us. So something that we can work. I think we're talking to our agency team to look at how we can explore that as a proxy in the timing. So watch this space.
Brilliant, thank you. And guys, we're probably done on time. We've gone over 5 minutes, and I probably have another 4 or 5 questions to ask you. So I do appreciate your time. But just in wrapping up, just to everyone who's still on, if I was to summarize the conversation that we've had in the past hour, and all the conversations that we're seeing in market and the data that's been coming through for the past 12 months in Australia, I'd probably do it in 3 ways. One is, media investment is becoming increasingly digitized as a whole. And with that comes increasing fragmentation and endless amounts of data on every single impression that a brand invests into. Okay. But the brands that are setting up foundations right now of measurement for digital investment are future-proofing their investments and their strategies, and they're mitigating the risk of media quality infractions. What we're seeing in the areas where there are infractions like suitability are businesses investing into foundations, but as the technology and the advancements are evolving, we're actually having to further develop and customize solutions. And as an industry, I really do think that we can see accurately and measure the risk now into wasted media investment that brands are faced with if they're not aligning with media quality metrics and identifying the best possible supply in the Australian and New Zealand marketplace. And that can as well either positively or negatively impact the ROI of a campaign or an advertiser's investment for the year. So I think there's huge opportunity there. There's more and more data, there's more fragmentation, but again, there's greater alignment and consistency of measurement in the industry that's going to allow brands to confidently invest in our marketplace. So thank you very much, Sujen and Greg, and to everyone who logged on today to the webinar. And again, for anyone who wants to get the full 20-page report, it's on www.doubleverify.com. But with that, we'll wrap up for the day. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Imran. Cheers. See you.
See ya.
I've been with DV for a little over 3 years now, leading the India business. Prior to that, I have worked with companies like LinkedIn, Mindshare, Lintas, /IPG, which is it now. I have been in the digital space for a while. I've seen how digital has evolved over the years from being just maybe a couple of % of share of media budgets to what it is now, challenging the most established media channels in India, right? So super excited to be here and bring in some interesting insights for you to take back to your work and to your digital strategies that you can perhaps action and optimize your media spends further. And I'm joined by Harish, by the way, who he needs no introduction. He's the EVP at Interactive Avenues and been there for, Harish, what, 13 years now or more than that?
17 years almost.
Gosh, 17 years. So, and he has been at the forefront of building Indian digital ecosystem to what it is today, right? He has helped craft digital journeys for some of the largest brands like Amazon, J&J, ITC, Mami, and so on and so forth. So Harish, thank you so much for being here today. We're so glad to have you. And let's get going with all the stats that we have for the India, right? But before we do that, for everyone, if you have any questions, please write us at events@doubleverify.com, and we will ensure that we respond to any question that you have for us. Yeah. Sorry, Harish. So let's.
Thanks for the introduction, Nachiket. And I think we should just get started.
Yeah, and I understand it's early morning, so we and we know how we start our days. But thank you so much, everyone who has taken time out so early in the morning. So Harish, let's start broadly, right? Since the pandemic, we've all seen how the digital consumption in India has exploded. As per Statista, 67% of consumers increased their frequency of visiting websites or apps over the past year, right? Another 59% expected to increase the media consumption on digital over the next 12 months, right? And you are at the forefront of this whole turmoil that's happening from consumption perspective, right? How has this shift impacted your clients? That's one. And second, given this shift, right, has digital media quality measurement become more of a concern for you and your customers? Any insights on that?
See, Nachiket, India is on a growth journey, and you see there's a huge shift in the consumer behavior. India is almost doing like a minimum of 10% year on year from a active user standpoint. And the maximum growth that we are seeing currently is coming from the rural areas. And in fact, in 2022, if you see, rural has kind of exceeded even the urban active usage numbers. And yes, as you see the trend shifting, there is a huge focus by a lot of brands in having a dedicated effort towards digital planning and investments, and all of these things without compromising on their core media and marketing objectives. So there is a huge shift from a planning and investment per se. Having said that, yes, measurement has always been a priority for most of our brands. And at IPG, we have a media responsibility index. That index basically strives to raise industry awareness around standards around media quality. And in fact, even in India, what I understand is the industry body is also working towards setting up certain measurement benchmarks, which will benefit a lot of brands in the coming years.
Yeah, totally with you. I think what we have seen, how we used to measure media, despite digital evolving so much, becoming 35,000 crore, media budget industry, But still, we face this problem of measurement, right? While so much of investment is coming to this, but as you rightly said, the industry bodies are now taking cognizance of that, which is a great step as a country and as an industry, I think. So thanks on that. Coming to the media quality in particular, and referring to the latest insights from the report, right? So if you look at display authentic viewability, and I'll just explain authentic viewability term for everybody here, right? So authentic viewability means an impression needs to be brand safe and fraud free and viewable and to be delivered in the particular geo that is intended to be delivered, right? That's how we define authentic viewability, right? So that number is at 64%, which is slightly up from the previous year. That's for display, right? But when it comes to video viewability is about 67%, which is 17% down from the previous year. Both of these viewability numbers are short of IAB's recommended threshold of 70%. The second stat is India saw some of the most significant increase in fraud and SIVT in APAC in the region, right? Which is almost 95% up year on year. And that too on desktop. Desktop is massive, which is about 234% increase in fraud on desktop, right? But while we are compromising or while we've slightly declined on viewability and fraud, the brand suitability violations we've seen have been down about 33% year on year. So do any of these figures surprise you when you consider quality figures for India? What do you think of about how India has progressed over the years, right? Are you concerned about the fraud rates in particular?
See, there has been a huge transformation in the way we are consuming the medium itself. Earlier, India was a heavy desktop market. Now, if you see, the growth that's come in is because of the growth in mobile users. And all of these metrics are, yes, way below the IAB standards and benchmarks that have been set. But I don't see that as a worry. That's because the gap is marginal. And plus, with the lot of technology around and advertisers being educated constantly around how this is going to help them bring efficiency, we are working towards achieving a decent benchmark, at least from an India standpoint. Fraud is a concern for everyone. That's because that clearly hampers your media efficiency and your marketing objective. So working towards reducing the fraud incidents is something that has always been our key priority. And that's why the media responsibility index that we've kind of put forward with a lot of partners in India is something that plays a very critical role in partner selection and during the planning process itself. So all of these factors are of topmost priority for not just for us, but for our brands as well. And they kind of form a very key pillar from our planning principles, media planning principles overall. So I do see that as a challenge, but yes, we're not far away, but we will achieve it in the coming years with the use of all the technologies that are.
And any feedback in terms of from your customers and the brands that you work with from thinking about media quality as part of their media planning?
See, the most of the thing happens when you're programmatically heavy, and that's where the quality of supply that you kind of consume plays a very critical role. So we are working towards supply path optimization and then layering it with the verification tools that are available, so that there is quality media that is available for brands delivering better efficiency. So it's a constant process. And we are in this whole journey together along with the brands, where there is education and at the same time implementation of all of these processes play a very critical role. So it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, I think that's a very critical point, Harish, that you made about supply path optimization. I think gaining insights into the real supplies is really challenging. When it comes to campaign execution at scale, right? If you have limited supply partners, then it's fine. But when you open it up to larger, supply cycle, then it becomes slightly challenging. And I have a shameless plug-in here. So we have, programmatic analytics as I wouldn't call it supply path optimization tool, but it's a dashboard which gives you more insights into supply path, right? From all the domains where the campaign has been delivered. What was your auction domain versus what was your delivered domain, etc. Right. So that's something which can give you a little bit of help in terms of building better supply path.
And that's where we are working closely with most of the advertisers, saying that in all of these, in the dynamic environment that we are in currently, it's more important to adopt to something like a pre-bid technology. It kind of helps you, get rid of the inventory that you don't want to be present at, and that keeps enhancing and improving the media quality as we keep moving. So a lot of technologies that are available needs to be brought to the forefront to our advertisers and brands, so that it's used efficiently to deliver the overall effectiveness that we're talking about.
Yeah. So it's not really the cost that's going into, but it's an investment which will yield better results for you eventually.
That's right. I mean, that's at the end of the day, all of these things help us curb the media wastage that we're talking about. And there is wastage across. So that'll kind of help them bring it down. And I wouldn't see that as a cost, but it's more of an investment in their whole marketing mix.
Makes sense. Yeah. Going back to what Collette was talking earlier, right? She spoke about need of always on protection, right? Across all campaigns and platforms. Are there brands you work with that that have to be convinced of the value of verification or the need to keep verification all on for at all the times? And what's your advice to them?
See, India is a very price sensitive market, if you see, and obviously most of the brands look at this investment as a cost towards the marketing mix. But I think as they're getting to know about how the technology brings in more effectiveness and efficiency, they're not treating this as more of a cost, but more of an investment. And yes, as we move forward, there are advertisers and brands who are open for implementing the technology in place. But at the same time, yes, it is a big thing for a lot of local advertisers, the kind of investments that they have to do from the verification standpoint. But I think it's a journey, and as we move forward, you will see more and more brands and advertisers signing up for it and taking this forward.
Yeah, makes sense. We have like a couple of minutes, and I really want to touch upon CTV in particular, right? Because we saw massive growth of CTV consumption from our set of customers, right? Which is about 369% increase in CTV consumption. But again, more budgets attract more fraud, right? Fraud goes where money goes. So we've seen, fraud numbers spiking up, about 11.2% fraud rate, for unprotected advertisers is what we saw. And what we call the TV off issue, right? Where the ads are recorded as having been shown, but the TV is actually off, right? It's not even on. In fact, one of the 3 CTV impressions that are served into environments that fire ads when the TV is turned off, right? Which is really shocking when we saw that. So how big a role does CTV play in your clients' media buying, and what are their primary concerns about it when it comes to quality?
See, CTV has become a very has become a talking point in India and within a lot of advertisers. And if you see, it has also become a very important in the overall media mix. And it is still in a growth phase. And I mean, if you see, yes, the numbers are huge. Even we are estimating around 40 million devices by 2025. And there will be a whole lot of verification challenges. But what we at IPG Media Brands are doing is we're working with premium partners and platforms. At the same time, we are working with technology partners, verification partners like DV to have it implemented across on our CTV buys. We're just waiting and looking forward for the data points to come in and set certain benchmarks with regards to CTV measurement. Obviously, with the rise of a new new channel or in a media plan, measurement will also be of utmost priority for our brands and us as an agency. So let's see how things move forward. But as of now, the first step is towards working with premium partners and platforms. That's the focus that has been for us.
Awesome. We are just about time. Last question, Harish maybe talks about viewability, the thresholds, and we can just sum up the conversation with this, right? So India's video viewability dropped, the most in APAC, and it's now below the recommended IAB threshold, right? Video investments are massive in India. We all know India is mobile first market. India is video first market, right? The viewability on video is at about 67%. 4/5 of the video ads are viewed on mobile apps, which had 18% drop in video viewability. So yes, the video viewability measurement is at an early stage in India, and this is part of why we see the numbers play out like this. But to what degree have advertisers in India adopted viewability as core quality metric, especially in the mobile app devices?
See, there are various. If you break it down basis genre, maybe you might see a different number altogether from an viewability standpoint, video viewability standpoint. But as we say, yes, it is an important metric, and it is very core when it comes to the measurement side of it, like what kind of efficiency it's bringing, because accordingly is what media investments are being done. And at the same time, if you see, there could be certain genres, there could be certain platforms which might have a huge viewability challenge. And that's where we need to relook about our entire strategy of how we kind of fix this piece. Having said that, yes, we are at an early stage. There has been a drop. There are being changes in the way you kind of measure. But it's not that far. We're not that far away as a market, and we keep evolving as we progress. So it's in the last 17-18 years we've evolved a lot as a market, and hopefully all of these metrics will also be in line with the global benchmarks that have been set.
Fantastic, great way to end, Harish. I think we keep evolving, and I think it takes time for us as a market to adopt new technologies. But when we adopt it, then it just booms, right? Which is what we've seen at every juncture in last few years that we have been in the industry. Thank you so much, Harish. It was a pleasure having you here, and thanks for being candid and sharing your feedback and your experience with measurement and quality in general in the state of media quality in India. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking your time out being here. Harish, any last thoughts?
No, that's it. Thanks a lot for having me on this panel, and thank you everyone for being a part of it. It was wonderful.
Thanks, Harish. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Please be sure to download the Global Insights Report 23 at www.doubleverify.com. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Good morning again, everybody. I'm Kritika Hemari, and I'm the Senior Director, Double Verify. I have here with me today Dominic Barnard, who was earlier on the APAC panel. Dom, nice to have you in the SEA breakout session.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Yeah, super excited to get started with this conversation. I'd just like to build a foundation based on some of the SEA numbers that we're seeing within our report. Overall, what we've seen with post-bid for protected advertisers who have measurement in place is that it's relatively stable within this region. but there are definitely pockets where this isn't the case. So again, looking at fraud as an example, right? It has been stable year on year, but there has been quite a spike and increase within Thailand at 142% in violations. But that is sort of balanced with the decrease in the Philippines by 13% and in Indonesia by about, I think, 30%. Going to viewability, I know this was a point of discussion as well. Very happy to see that Southeast Asia is doing well and going over and above the IAB benchmarks. So we're seeing 85% for video viewability and just over 70% on display. One of the things we also noticed was within the travel vertical for our region, there's been an increase and by 14% last year. So not a huge surprise given that we've all been very hungry to travel post-COVID and all the restrictions. The only unfortunate bit is with brand suitability. So we've seen that the rates have gone up by 7% within the region, with Indonesia leading the pack by 31%. So that's a lot of numbers that I have thrown out, but I'd like to get started broadly. Dom, you mentioned that you have internal systems in place at GroupM, and that's amazing, right? But I'd really like to get an understanding of how do the brands that you work with think about quality as part of their media planning?
Sure. So I think brands actually don't. I don't think they don't think about quality enough, in my opinion. I think they're more focused on CPMs, and just driving down cost and trying to get the most reach possible. But then when they do think about brand safety is when some sort of brand safety breach occurs. So if they see their brand next to content that they don't think is suitable for their brand, that's when clients really start to get interested. And so it's a very much preventative measure to put in place things like ad verification and different best practices to ensure that we are targeting towards quality. I think agencies are actually better placed to set the standards for things like supply management as well, as they can look at trends across clients and sort of make sweeping adjustments which can dramatically improve supply and quality. For example, SSP and domain inclusion lists, just creating partnerships with those specific SSPs or domains. And then I think in terms of just some of the numbers that you've just been through, some of the brand suitability violation numbers, I think are a little concerning potentially. Partially Australia's rise of about 20% year on year. I think a lot of this is, and Indonesia as well, but I think this is mainly driven by mobile web usage. And although this is concerning, I think this does show the power of ad verification data and allowing us to spot these kind of red flags. And then this can allow us to only improve our practices going forward. So as long as we are monitoring and we're actually flagging these data points, then it allows us to improve over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it sounds very familiar because we do have similar conversations with brands within our region as well. It's a lot about education on our end, together with our agency partners. That sort of leads me to my next question. We see that, Southeast Asia is by no means homogeneous. It's such a diverse market in terms of the levels of verification used. Do you see that, are there any certain countries within the region that you think are ahead of the game when it comes to quality or having an understanding of verification at all?
Sure. So I think in terms of adoption, I'd actually say it's less of a market conversation and it's more of a client level conversation. So if there's global or regional level clients who have the scale and the size to actually to have more focus on adopting best practices around quality, or engaging with different ad verification tools that are available in the industry, that's I think they're the ones who really can engage and they can start to evolve their sort of ad verification journey or their quality journey. But then, I'd say it's more at that level. That's where we can see those sort of improvements and have those holistic conversations talking about multiple markets and saying that this, this is the kind of standards that we can put in place across multiple markets. That's where there's more impact. But then I think in terms, so someone like a Unilever, for example, has a good strategy over time that they've built on, and they've analyzed their data, they've adjusted their practices, and sort of constantly evolved. But then I think when it does come to some markets, from my perspective, some of the data points I've been looking at on my side recently, I'd say Thailand is particularly doing some strong work around supply and managing to reduce SSP counts and domain counts, which is allowing us to sort of improve quality overall. Obviously, I had to say Thailand as well. It's where I'm living at the moment.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah.
Perfect. I want to get a little bit into the always on protection approach that Collette discussed earlier. Almost as a security system. We also like to talk about it sometimes. If you're in a car, whether you're driving it or whether you're sitting inside, you should have your seatbelt on at all times. Kind of an approach. So, given that, of course, we understand that there's perhaps a higher level of understanding with global brands. But in general, are there any brands that you work with that have to be really convinced of the value of verification or the need to have it always on at all?
So there's a range of different engagements that we see across clients across the region. So I actually conducted an audit last year across multiple different areas within programmatic, but one of the areas was ad verification. And I did see that for some of the smaller clients, ad verification is not really engaged with enough, and I think they just see it as an additional CPM cost potentially that's eating into their media budget, but they're not really considering that if without any verification methodologies in place, or with stripped back verification methodologies, that's going to actually reduce the quality of the media they're delivering to themselves. So they might just be looking at that simple CPM number or just looking at the cost metric, but actually they need to really be considering quality. And as I kind of touched upon just a minute ago, I think there's some of the larger clients, they're the ones who can really start to engage and go on that sort of journey of ad verification, and really start to improve their practices and start testing the new features, start doing things like engaging with attention. How can they incorporate that into their media plans? I'd also say that there's no client has a perfect strategy. I think there's always room for improvement. So there's they can be testing different features that are available in the market. They can also be looking at their reports more stringently and adjusting their practices to curate their supply based off of the ad verification data they're seeing. So there's always work to be done. I think it's never as I said, never a perfect strategy.
We never sleep, right, Dom? We're always...
Exactly.
That brings me to the next challenge. When you have clients who want to adopt or invest in new channels or new platforms, for example, like new social media platforms, how important do you think is quality for them when they consider media planning, or how do you go about convincing them that it is very important when testing a new channel?
Sure. So I think maintaining quality becomes it's very important in new environments. That it always needs to be considered, but at the same time, don't want it to reduce testing in new environments, because we need to be able to test and learn, and as to develop that ecosystem and to grow. It's great that, for example, with CTV, we're talking about the challenges that we're seeing with fraud. It's we just need to keep banging that drum and making sure that we're focusing on it and starting to make an impact in the industry and reduce the amount of activity that bad actors can get their hands on. We want to reduce the amount of investment that can be funneled off towards them. So I think it's definitely something that we want to keep testing, and we definitely want to start evolving into new media channels constantly. But then just make sure that we're working with partners like yourselves to be able to monitor this activity, to spot where there's anomalies and and where it looks like the data is showing that there could be potential fraud or etc. So I think there's lots that we can be doing to monitor that fraud and to reduce those fraud rates, but then also make sure that we are just being cautious basically when we're doing first tests with clients.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned CTV, I think it's a good time to dive a little bit deeper within that platform or channel or environment as well. I know Collette mentioned the figures, and they're quite startling for our region at an 11.2% fraud rate. It sounds like a small number, but that's massive when you look at the billions of impressions, right? And the amount of dollars spent. And also with the TV off issue where ads are getting recorded. I think it's in fact 1 in 3 CTV impressions that are served in environments where the TV is off. So a lot of wasted dollars. Are these numbers shocking to you at all?
So I'd actually say I'm actually not shocked by these numbers. I'm not surprised. I've been trying to talk about fraud rates for a while. And also, I actually did some of the first tests in CTV environments about 5 years ago, when I was based in the UK.
Yeah.
And there were brand safety concerns then, and there's still brand safety concerns now as we start to grow CTV into just more and more markets, because it's still evolving globally. So
Yeah.
there's definitely some challenges to be aware of there. But as I said, I'm not too surprised by it. This is not new news to me. But as I mentioned, we've got our Finecast model. So there's GroupM's addressable TV buying arm. So it's dedicated at creating quality supply and maintaining the utmost quality in this fragmented ecosystem. Finecast has been rolled out across multiple markets in APAC and Southeast Asia already, and I think this is all in part to address these quality concerns and make sure that we're just engaging with trusted partners.
Absolutely, and with Finecast, which is fantastic, when you have conversations with clients, are there, like in general with CTV, any sort of pressing concerns or issues that they raise before they want to go ahead and test?
I think that there's a lot of reporting that they're doing constantly. So we're constantly looking at the data to show if there's concerning areas or if we're concerned by some of the partners' data. If it's showing that there's tracked fraud, then we'll call them out. So that's something that they're constantly working at to just make sure that we are cutting down the supply to only sort of trusted partners, and then working with them to get the best out of their sort of capabilities in terms of reaching the audiences. At the end of the day, we're trying to just reach audiences at a cost-effective way.
Yeah.
So it's about sort of packaging up this fragmented ecosystem into a nice sort of digestible format, so we can reach those audiences across different screens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think quality versus quantity has never been more important.
Yep, exactly.
I'd just like to turn our attention to attention. I know there was a lot of it spoken about, but that is currently the new hot topic that the industry is talking about. We also have at DVR authentic attention solution. And we've seen, in terms of viewability, we've seen that our region is doing really well. Some of the conversations we do have and have started, with brands and agency partners is really going beyond traditional metrics of just looking at viewability in isolation. What are your thoughts, and how do you position attention when it comes to your clients?
Sure. So I did touch upon this a little bit earlier, but so hopefully it's not too repetitive. But in terms of attention, I think this is the next step in quality measurement, and I think it's a very good way to go, because it's not just I think clients are seeing it as just adding another metric, so they can see it as and then where does that fit in? So if we're already targeting viewability and we're already targeting we're already focusing on other quality metrics like fraud rates and IVT, then where does this extra attention metric come in? Whereas I think that's the wrong way to look at it, and it should be considered the collection of different metrics. So And this is a way to almost bundle up a range of different engagement metrics into this single sort of unified metric, which could be more powerful. So if we can set the standards, then I think we can, should be able to set sort of industry standards around attention. Then we should be able to, grow the proposition in the industry.
Absolutely, thank you for that. And I think we just have another minute left. So to round things off, I'd just like to hear some last words from you. Anything you'd like to share with our audience, with brands, with agency partners, with DVers?
I guess just to sort of end it, I think we need to keep a continued focus on media supply. So buying with trusted platforms and publishers to sort of maintain the utmost quality. As I just said, I think we need to drive the concept of attention and evolve this as a new quality metric and a new type of measurement. And then, as I mentioned earlier as well, I think we're on the cusp of a new era in technology in terms of AI. So I think this is, it's growing at this exponential rate, and this is going to shake up our industry as well as many other industries globally. So I think we just need to be very aware of this and see how we can use it to make sure online environments maintain that sort of level of quality, and also help it to evolve our technology as well, so we can better reach consumers online.
Thanks, Dom. That's some really good takeaways. And I wish we could speak more, but we're just on time. But thank you so much for speaking with us today. And also like to thank the audience for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the session. Hope you got, what you wanted out of it. Again, if you have any questions, please send them through to events@doubleverify.com. And also please do download the report at www.doubleverify.com. Thank you so much and have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you.